Hey everyone, welcome back to the Roto Grinders Morning Grind podcast. I'm your host, Stevie TPFL. It's June 3rd. It's Friday. That means we have our normal Friday guest here. And missed you on Monday, my friend, but it was Memorial Day. And I'm glad to have you back, Hoop. How you doing, my friend?
Happy to be here. Nice Friday slate. Basically any slate nowadays is fun and enjoyable. So a lot of good plays. Looks like we are out of Coors, so we don't have to worry about jamming in exposure there. But yeah, happy to be back. Nice slate, and we'll see if we can help these people make themselves some extra money today.
Yeah, appreciate all the kind tweets from the early slate yesterday. I slept through it. I was up until like 6:30 in the morning working on like Ty Dillon stuff and like articles and stuff. So I slept through it, but I was gonna stack the Cubs and Giants, and a bunch of people did off my recommendation, and it went nuts in the early slate. So congrats to you guys for not sleeping in like me. So I'm excited to get in here, but before we get going here, we got to mention our sponsor site, FantasyDraft.com. They got their $15,000 home run here on Friday night. So make sure you guys check that out. Use promo code Grinders if you haven't started playing there yet. Also, we were just kind of talking about it before we got started here. They got a bunch of little, rake-free high-dollar double-ups and head-to-head games here posted in the lobby. And it's not for the, some people with their smaller bankrolls, but rake-free high-dollar games is going to be popular if they continue to do kind of stuff like this.
Yeah, absolutely. Rake is essentially on the rise throughout the industry. So any opportunity you get to play in a contest where the rake is lowered, or in this case, non-existent, it's definitely an opportunity and something you need to look to be taking advantage of.
I definitely agree. Let's jump in, man. We got 14 games here. We're going to skip over that 2 o'clock game. It's just Wrigley Field on Friday. For as long as I can remember, they've played at 2 o'clock. So we're going to start with New York at Baltimore. Chris Tillman and Nathan Eovaldi. These two pitchers haven't pitched bad this season. What's your thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, they've both pitched well. I mean, obviously, look at Chris Tillman. He's got 7 wins. That's not a big indicator of anything. 2.92 ERA, and the way it looks, everything's kind of in line. So he's been pitching well, but not a big fan of either of these guys. Clearly, a much better hitting environment opposed to pitching environment. Yankees lineup somewhat weak, I guess you could say, at this point in the season, but they have some left-handed bats that can definitely cause some damage. So I can't get excited about Tillman or Eovaldi today. I think there's guys in much better spots for GPPs, and especially guys in much better spots for your cash games.
Yeah, cash games, yes, I definitely agree. Tournaments, though, I like Tillman. Everything suggests he has some regression coming, but even with that being said, the Yankees are awful against right-handed pitching and left-handed pitching this season. Like, they'll have their spurts and they'll hit the ball really hard at times, but when we're looking at the numbers, they're ranked 26th in WRC plus, and they're ranked last in BABIP against right-handed pitchers this season. Tillman has an interesting, kind of matchup here. If you can get him on the cheap on some sites where they kind of adjust for matchups, the Yankees are a name, and Tillman's going to be less than 10% owned here, and I like it for that reason.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point there. Actually, he should be low owned, and like you said, if he's cheap somewhere, you have the name recognition of the Yankees. People don't really like taking pitchers against them, so that's a very fair point. Yeah.
And the one thing that we do want to note about Tillman this season is swinging strike rate is way up and his contact rate is way down. So that's something to pay attention to as we continue to move on throughout the season here with Tillman. So now on the other side of this game, Eovaldi is a guy that has that, pretty straight fastball. And when you're facing a team like Baltimore, a pretty flat, straight fastball could be the disaster. I don't want anything to do with him, but I do want some of these bats.
Yeah, this is a really good spot to get exposure to some bats in cash games. I like the cheapies in tournaments. I like the more expensive guys. The one cheap bat that does stand out to me is, all right, going to attempt to pronounce this, Hyun Soo Kim. If he continues, Kim. Yeah, Kim. Well, let's go Kim. If Kim bats second, he's a guy that I would like to get some exposure to, especially on a site like FanDuel. He's only 2.6K. That's a pretty good value. And I like the more expensive bats in tournaments. Trumbo, who I think before we popped on the air, just hit his second home run of the night. So offers a ton of upside, price fair around the industry. Chris Davis is another guy. So I like the expensive bats in tournaments, and I'd definitely be looking to get exposure to some of these cheapies in cash games.
Any love here for Tillman? When he usually struggles, it's against righties. Numbers aren't great against lefties, but they're much better than his numbers against righties.
Not really. I just can't get overly excited to really play this guy. I mean, it's a guy that I rarely play in DFS, so for the most part, off him tonight.
Yeah, I think I'm with you there. I really can't love any of these New York bats. I'm with you. I'm gonna kind of stay away from the Yankees here on the slate. So stack them if you're gonna play them. Stack them. Don't try to pick off who's gonna be one of these guys. Pick 3 or 4 of these guys and load up on them. Milwaukee at Philadelphia. Velasquez and Jimmy Nelson. This is an interesting game. When we're looking at the slate, it's just one of those things where we think upside against Milwaukee with strikeout pitchers, but Velasquez he's been struggling in the last couple starts. Is this a spot that he can turn it around?
I think it is. I actually like this spot for him. I think he's very interesting option tonight. I have to dig a little deeper to see to what level, to what extent am I, comfortable playing him in cash games? Am I comfortable playing him in GPPs? That's kind of yet to be determined, but this is a good spot for him. Facing this Milwaukee Brewers team, he'll have the ability to face quite a few right-handed bats. The one thing that I'm kind of hesitant on at this point is the Brewers are probably at their peak in terms of health right now. Their lineup's fairly healthy. They have Villar leading off, who seems to be very impressive. Jeanette batting second. They have Braun. They have Lucroy. Chris Carter's having a good season. So that's the only thing that's really drawn me back. At a bare minimum right now, I say he's a very good GPP option.
I definitely agree. The strikeout upside alone makes him a GPP option. What's your thoughts here? Jimmy Nelson's a guy that from time to time we'll target him at home, but his home road splits are pretty crazy, and they've been that way for a year and a half now. See a guy you feel like you can just stay away from here?
I don't know. The matchup's kind of good, and he's pitched pretty good this season. So you look at the Phillies' offense, and they don't have many intimidating bats. Yeah, they picked up Jimmy Paredes and immediately inserted him into the 3-hole. So that says a lot about a team that is picking up a player almost midway through the season, and he just hops in their lineup, and he's their number 3 batter. So weak lineup overall. He's pitched well, but like you said, the one drawback here is the split. So I have some interest in him definitely in tournaments, and if he's cheap somewhere on a multiple pitcher site, I'd definitely give him a look there.
I feel like we can say both these guys are in playing tournaments. Just looking at the slate here. And I'll lead it off here. Every day I give out 3 guys that I want to target on fantasy draft because of their price. And Jimmy Paredes, 5,400. If they're just going to insert him into that 3 spot, Jimmy Nelson struggles against lefties. I like his price at 5,400. He's almost a free play. I feel like he's a cash game play at that price tag.
Yeah, at that price tag, I definitely give him a look. That's really cheap, and it'll allow you to stack up on some bats.
Yeah, you'll be able to load up lineups. I actually expect him to be pretty popular at that price tag. Let's talk bats. I let it off here with Paredes. Is there anybody else that you want here from Philadelphia?
Not really. I mean, you can always extract that value out of this lineup. They juggle it around for the most part. You can take advantage of cheapies that might be hitting towards the top of the order, like Cesar Hernandez, if he's up there. Sometimes Blanco works his way to the top of the order. So, in terms of targeting Phillies, I need to see the lineup first before I can really commit to any of these guys. They mix it up quite a bit. But that's the one thing, you really want to see on the site you're playing. I know Paredes was not available today on a lot of sites. If they bring him in and he's the minimum, it's definitely a situation you want to take advantage of.
Yeah, we're already seeing, I know he's on Fantasy Draft, and he's only 2,100 on FanDuel as Paredes at 3,100 or 2,100 at third base. He's going to be really popular over there as well. So, he's going to be a popular play here on the slate. But, hey, if he's in the 3 spot against Jimmy Nelson, he should be popular.
Yeah.
Any Brewers bats that you really want to target here?
I guess the one bat that kind of stands out a little bit is Jeanette. He should be batting second here. Really cheap for the most part across the industry, so I don't mind him. kind of talked about it before. I think Villar's, I think he's a stud. I think he's an absolute stud. I think he's a guy that has some longevity in Major League Baseball. Price has come up a little bit though, so if he's priced fairly on the site you're playing on, I do kind of like him. But I think my favorite would be Jeanette, and that's just where he's priced cheaply.
I definitely agree. Angels at Pirates taking on, Francisco Liriano, Jared Weaver. Any interest in these two guys?
Definitely not Jared Weaver. Just back end of his career, things slowing down. It's actually a tough spot here. This is a pitcher's ballpark, but Pirates lineup, they have some guys in there that can definitely do some damage against Weaver. So no to Jeff Weaver in all formats. Jared Weaver, I'm sorry.
No to Jeff too.
No to definitely no to Jeff. If he finds his way on the mound, that's definitely a big fat no.
Any love here for Liriano? I pretty much said that I was done with him. I'm gonna stick to my word here. I'm not gonna be playing him tonight.
He's a guy. I don't know. It's got to be the right matchup, and I don't know. I kind of do like this matchup. The Angels traveling to Pittsburgh. They lose their DH, so you're taking a watered down lineup and you're watering it down even more. But Liriano is a guy that just disappoints always, in really good spots. So I think at the bare minimum, I think he's an adequate GPP option. I would not mind getting exposure to him in GPPs.
Fair point. Definitely fair points. I like the Pittsburgh stack here. I don't know how popular it's going to be. We don't have Coors Field. We got a team that isn't a pitcher's ballpark. I'm not expecting it to be too popular here, but I like Pittsburgh a lot. When Weaver struggles, it's against righties, and he's going to see a lot of right-handed bats in this lineup. I think Pittsburgh is a sneaky stack, and my favorite play is Kong. He's pretty cheap, and he has power against righties. He's probably my favorite play here just because of price tag.
Yeah, and if he gets that clean up spot, that definitely adds even more value. So I like him. Polanco, I think, what is he day to day? I believe he potentially, he has a foot injury, so that's something to monitor there. So if he's out, you might see a cheapie work their way to the top, maybe a Matt Joyce or someone like that. So keep an eye on the lineup, but definitely this is a good spot to get exposure, a very elite tournament GPP stack as well.
Yeah, Joyce, if Joyce gets the start, he's going to be a nice value play as well. His price across the industry is really, really fair, so you can definitely get exposure to him. Now, looking at the other side of this game, you said Liriano he interests you in a deep field tournament. Is there any bats that you want to take against him here?
I mean, it's just going to be Mike Trout for me, and the Angels lineup is pretty weak from top to bottom, and he's really the only bat that has GPP winning upside night in and night out.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Outside of Trout, I think I'm gonna stay away from the Angels here, even though I've been playing Gio Votella a lot. I just don't know if I can do it here. He's starting to cool down, so I'm gonna get off that train and take the train to Boston, where Toronto is meeting up with the Red Sox. My Red Sox are El Fuego right now. It just doesn't say anything better than that. David Price, R.A. Dickey. So they're hot, and they get a matchup at home against R.A. Dickey. Like, yes, please?
Yeah, this can't end well for R.A. Dickey, and it should end really well for the Boston bats. Very, very cut and dry here. I mean, you want these Boston bats. Problem is they're expensive. So if you're going to save at pitcher, definitely the route to go. You have to consider David Ortiz as one of the top overall plays on the slate. Mookie Betts, obviously, red. I mean, they're all hot. I mean, it's hard to even single out some of these guys. I mean, they're all red hot. So you definitely want to look for price breaks, if they're underpriced on a site, which for the most part you're not going to find because they're all priced pretty adequately across the industry. So it's definitely a team you want to attack. Problem is the prices. So is it feasible to get 4 or 5 of these guys in your lineup? Probably not. Is it feasible to get 2 of these guys in your lineup? Probably, and you want to try to do so, especially in cash games.
David Price, his price tag is, he's in the elite range as far as price goes. He's an ace. He's faced Toronto twice this season. Really good game at home against Toronto. Struggled against Toronto on the road. What's your thoughts here? Are you just staying away because it is Toronto, or do you think he has some upside here?
I don't know. I am not overly interested in David Price tonight. The matchup is just brutal here against the Toronto Blue Jays. They have a lot of bats in this lineup that can do damage against left-handed pitching. David Price has been pretty shaky to start the season, a lot of up and down type performances. So I don't like the spot for him. The price is pretty fair around the industry. So, I mean, maybe, I guess, yeah, definitely in GPPs and cash games. I'm not sure at this point I'll be going that route.
Yeah, I think I tend to agree. I'm not going to load up on bats against Price. I might take Donaldson on one or two tournament teams just because he has upside here, but I think I'm going to stay away. Washington at Cincinnati, good ballpark here. When we're looking at the slate, the American Small Park here in Cincinnati. Gio Gonzalez, Brandon Finnegan. I don't know how much I want to target Gio Gonzalez in this matchup. He's been pitching pretty well this season. Any thoughts for him here?
I mean, yeah, he has pitched pretty well. Reds lineup is, not the most intimidating thing, and the more potent bats in their lineup happen to be left-handed as well, so that definitely works to Gonzalez's favor. But yeah, I don't know if I'm overly excited to play him here. Obviously, a more hitter-friendly ballpark on the road. I don't know. Gio Gonzalez is a guy I really only look to play in certain spots, and typically it's at home and facing like a more weak lineup. And I don't know, kind of off Gio here. Could be an interesting tournament play, or on multiple pitcher sites if he's priced cheaply. I suppose you go that route, but not overly excited about him, to be honest.
I don't know if I can do it. Like you said, the Reds lineup, they're pretty middle of the road against lefties, so I could see the upside here. It's just every time we start trusting in Gio, he just like fails us, and that's what he's done. 3 of his last 5 starts. So I just can't do it. I'm not going to be shocked if he goes out and pitches a good game. I just don't think I'm going to have a lot of exposure here now. Brandon Finnegan, both of us probably easily, fade this guy. Look at some of these bats when we're looking at Washington. They're one of the best teams in baseball against left-handed pitching. They have really solid WOBA, ISO, WRC plus, hard contact rate. All this stuff is really high. So let's talk some Washington bats here at Cincinnati. So they're on the road. So we might even see, a good chance to get some five at bats from some of these guys.
Yeah, and I think my favorite guy is going to be Jason Worth. Depending on the lineup spot, he has batted second against left-handed pitching. So if he's in there batting second, he's a guy I love. Good park bump here in Cincinnati. Like you said, it's a very hitter-friendly environment. So I like him. If Bryce Harper's in the lineup, I mean, I don't care. A lefty-lefty matchup, I'd be looking to him as well. The price is down for the most part across the industry on FanDuel. He's only 3.9K. I'd play him lefty-lefty and not think twice about it. Rendon's another guy to consider. I mean, this is a good team to even stack up because they have some left-handed bats are going to be at the top of the order. Daniel Murphy as well. People avoid that lefty-lefty matchup. Been arguably a top 5, top 10 hitter in baseball this season. I think the stats actually indicate like he's the second best hitter in baseball. So this dude's been really, really good. So I like the individual pieces for cash games, the cheaper ones, and obviously stacking them up is a very viable strategy as well.
Yeah, Rendon, probably my favorite bat here. I talk about it, a couple times just this week, but I love punting with Danny Espinosa. But unfortunately, he has home runs in 4 of the last 7 games, and his price has come up. So I can't get that like $2,200 home run upside. His price is up just about everywhere. I still think he's an interesting tournament play here. Like, he hits left-handed pitching a lot better than most. And when we're looking at the slate, the ballpark, all that stuff, he could be a guy that has some upside.
For tournaments, absolutely. I mean, they're not going to roster Danny Espinosa. They weren't when he was 2.2K or 2K or close to the minimum on the site you're playing. Now that his price is up, people still aren't going to play him. So I like that call for tournaments. He has some upside and a sneaky good hitter against left-handed pitching, as you said.
Now looking at some bats here, Cincinnati. Anybody that you really want to take here against Gio?
Not really. It's a situation where I'm not overly excited about the pitcher. I'm not overly excited on picking on him either. The only guy I'd take a shot on would be this Duvall guy who appears to be pretty damn good. So I'd take a shot on him. He'll be low owned, but outside of that, not picking on, not really rostering him, and not necessarily picking on him either.
Yeah. If I had to take one or two bats, it would be Cozart in that leadoff spot and Billy Hamilton just for the upside. And I don't even mind Suarez against the lefty, but I'm not going to go crazy. It's going to be one-off fill-in plays and tournaments that I'm looking for some upside now. Moving on, New York Mets at Miami taking on the Marlins. Now, this is just an interesting thing here because, Syndergaard obviously probably the best pitcher on the board here, but he just threw 17, 18, 19 pitches out of the bullpen, just 2 days ago. Does that worry you at all?
It's a weird situation. Was there any reasoning behind that? Did anyone come out and say why they did that?
Well, he was ejected. He was ejected in the start before that. I don't know if it just was workload, but
a little bit, or I don't know. I mean, you have to imagine if he's out there pitching, he's going to be in for his full workload. So unless I read something otherwise, I'm assuming, he's going to go out there and do what he normally does, and he's going to have no sort of leash on him. So, like I said, unless I hear otherwise, that's kind of the mindset I'm rolling with, and he's probably the top pitcher on this slate.
Definitely in the same agreement here. I'm not going to look too much into it. I'm just going to roll Syndergaard out here. He has the most upside on the slate. Now, I want nothing to do with Tom Kohler, even though the Mets bats, if you want to target like a GPP pitcher, the Mets bats are ice cold right now.
Ice cold, absolutely. So it's a situation where they're facing a pretty crappy pitcher. They're a team that's actually that has the bats that can succeed better against right-handed pitching than left-handed pitching. So this is a spot where you might want to look to take advantage of some price breaks. Like you said, these guys are ice cold. So if their prices have dropped at all, you definitely, now's the time to kind of do it. And Conforto, Granderson, Neil Walker, those are the guys you want to look to. Even Cespedes is in play. So if the prices have dropped on the sites you're playing on, I'd have no problem going back to them. And these guys will start hitting at some point.
It's funny that you mentioned Conforto. He's actually the second of, the fantasy draft plays here. Kohler, a guy, pretty neutral stats against lefties and righties, but, we're looking at Conforto on fantasy draft, only 7,600. It's been a long time since we've seen him under 8K. So I like him a lot here. I think he's definitely cash game playable. 7,600 is very fair for him. Yeah. But I just wanted to point out one thing. It is a matchup against Syndergaard, but Stanton's the same price at 7,600.
Oh, gosh. He did hit a double or something tonight, so maybe he's getting back on track. I don't know if I can do it, but I think tournament consideration, definitely.
I don't even know if I can do it in tournaments. Kansas City at Cleveland. Danny Salazar, Edison Volquez. Do we say, I don't want to jinx him because honestly, Danny Salazar is pitching good this season. I've used him a bunch. I don't want to jinx him, but I do like him in this spot.
Yeah, I like him, and kind of going to beat the same drum here, but this Royals team, not the same team as last year, whereas like a full avoid situation in terms of taking pitchers against them. Not the same lineup. They're still without Moustakas, and I think their other pieces are a little weaker as well. So I don't mind taking these high strikeout pitchers against them. And Salazar is a pretty decent favorite here. Opened up -150, 7.5 total. I have interest in Salazar, and I definitely will be looking to play him tonight. There's no doubt about it. Cash game viable pitcher, and definitely GPP viable pitcher as well.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree here. Anybody that averages over a strikeout per inning is a guy that I'm going to always look at, in tournaments, and everybody gets scared off against the Royals. And hey, I'm one of those guys, 95% of the time I won't play pitchers against the Royals. I just think this is a good spot for Salazar. Now, Volquez, do you have any interest in him?
No, I really don't. The Indians, they have some left-handed bats there that can do some damage. Volquez, it's got to be the right matchup, I guess, for me to really consider him. Typically at home, facing a weaker offense. On the road here, facing Cleveland. I'm off him, but I think it's kind of a situation I brought up earlier where it's like I'm definitely not playing him, and I don't think I'm going to take many bats against him either.
Yeah, I think I'm off the bats in this game. Like,
Yeah.
honestly, outside of Merrifield, and I never thought that I would say that, but outside of him, I just don't want any bats here.
Yeah, I agree with you. Not much upside.
White Sox at Detroit, the Tigers, they let me down on Thursday. I stack the Tigers more than anybody else. I
Didn't
say
they
that all
score
the
like
time.
12?
What's that?
Didn't they score like 12 runs?
Not no, it's 1-1.
Oh, it was 2 nights ago you're touting them though, right?
Oh yeah, and yeah, I cleaned up on that night.
Yeah,
But
see,
no,
getting a little greedy.
no, I'm not getting greedy at all. But I will say one thing: I love them again. It's
Yeah,
Friday. They get a lefty at home. What's not to love about your Tigers tonight?
yeah, I love them. I'll give them crap when they deserve it, and I'll be off them when they deserve it. This is a really good spot for them at home facing Rodon here. They have a lot of guys in this lineup that can do damage. Justin Upson obviously hit the home run a couple nights ago. Really cold to start the season, no doubt about that. But I think now is a good time to start getting on him. And you look at his price around the industry, and it is super, super low. So I love him as a one-off tournament guy, and obviously part of a Tiger stack as well. And it's the usual suspects here. It's him. It's JD Martinez. It's Miguel Cabrera. Ian Kinsler as well, Victor Martinez, and if any of these outfielders, these cheap outfielders, get in there as well, I definitely have interest in them. So it's a good offense to target in all formats tonight.
Yeah, one other name that I want to throw out there, just because his price everywhere is super cheap, is James McCann. He hits left-handed pitching really well. Good spot for him. Carlos Rendon, when we're looking at the stats, 350 WOBA, almost a 30% hard contact to righties. This is a great matchup to load up on Tigers bats here. I'm going to be doing it quite a bit.
Yeah.
Zimmerman, he's a guy that, he's supposed to pitch. Right now he's supposed to pitch. He threw a bullpen. Supposed to pitch. I think I'm going to take the wait and see approach. Even though I like the chances of him to pick up the win, I think I'm going to take the wait and see approach here with a groin injury on a pitcher.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think that's the right move there. I mean, any sort of question mark with a starting pitcher, you have to be super cautious. These teams are not going to risk guys. I mean, especially like Zimmerman, they just gave him this big contract. So, and the matchup's not great either. So I think it's a easy avoid situation. He's not a high strikeout pitcher, so I think fading him is totally fine in all formats.
Yeah, I honestly think I agree with you there.
On the other hand, he's good enough where you don't want to take a lot of bats against him. If he does go out there and get his full workload and, is able to pitch 100 to 110 pitches, I don't want many bats against him.
Yeah, I'm not taking bats against him. I definitely agree with you there. Seattle at Texas. Darvish against Walker. Darvish, is he back? Looking at that start against Pittsburgh, he looked pretty good.
Yeah, he looked good. I mean, I wish the situation, the matchup was a little bit better. So I think right out the gate, definitely a guy to consider for tournaments. A massive strikeout upside guy. Looked very sharp in his first start, 5 innings, 7 strikeouts, picked up the win. But the matchup's actually pretty damn poor. It's Seattle heading to Texas, one of the better hitting environments in baseball. They have a lot of left-handed bats that can do damage, and their offense this season has been one of the better offenses in the American League as well. So the matchup, as far as I'm concerned, is pretty crappy. So, I definitely not picking on him. I think he's fine to get exposure to in GPPs for cash games. I'm going to wait a couple more starts and wait for a better matchup.
Be careful with the weather in Texas. The Texas game and the Houston game. Every day, when I start looking at the slate and I, look at, weather is one of the first things that I always look at just to see like the weather, the humidity, stuff like that. The humidity is massive in Texas. So if these games play, I'm off both these pitchers just because the matchup isn't great here. I love the bats. I'll pretty much take 1 through 5, 1 through 6 on both sides here.
In tournaments?
Yeah, no, I'm not going to play these guys in cash games.
Yeah.
The pitchers are too good.
Yeah, exactly. So I agree with you. I think tournament stacks, no doubt about it. Cash game, you're probably going to be off all 4 sides, the pitching sides for both teams and the hitting team. The upside in tournaments is definitely there because of the weather, like you said.
Tampa at Minnesota, Jake Odorizzi. Ricky Nolasco, dare I say Jake Odorizzi is a decent play here against Minnesota.
Yeah, and Twins struggle against right-handed pitching. He's a guy that has some pretty decent upside. 7 strikeouts and 6 strikeouts in his last 2 matchups, the Marlins and the Yankees. Uh, yeah, I can get on board with that. I don't mind him as an SB2, and I think the pitching overall tonight is weak enough where you can consider him in tournaments as well.
I think Joe Mauer is starting to slow down a little bit. He was really hot. Sano on the DL. You're really worried about Nunez, Dozier, I guess even Mauer and Park, but none of those guys really enough reason to kind of stay away from a pitcher. I think Odorizzi is a great tournament play here.
I agree with you.
The problem is he usually just throws too many pitches and doesn't pitch deep in the game. So not a cash game play, tournament only. Ricky Nolasco, on the other hand, this guy is awful. He stinks against right-handed bats. 355 WOBA, 31.5% hard contact rate. The strikeout rate is decent, but if you want to go sneaky here, look at some of these Tampa bats here against Nolasco.
Yeah, it's going to be a sneaky stack, like you said. People really only target Tampa Bay bats when they're facing a left-handed pitcher because they have a lot of guys in their lineup that hit really well against left-handed pitching. Pierce, Longoria, Guy or Souza, those guys. So in play here, like you said, he struggles against right-handed hitters. He's going to face a lot of them, and a lot of them that have power. So it'll be really sneaky, and I like your call there.
Any bats that you want to target here against Odorizzi?
Yeah, honestly, there's not much to like with this Twins lineup when they're facing I'd say slightly above average starting pitcher. So yeah, I don't know. I'm really not on them. I don't think there's much upside in tournaments either.
All right, moving on to the next game. Oakland at Houston. Just like I mentioned with the Rangers, make sure you're paying attention to the rain here in this game, and that's the reason that we have Kevin Roth, Jesse Hahn, Doug Fister. I want neither one of these pitchers, and I want a bunch of bats.
Yeah, it's going to be another really good spot to get exposure to some offenses. Obviously, the Astros guys are going to be a little more expensive. Altuve, Springer, Correa, Rasmus, Gaddis. All those guys are a lot more expensive than the Oakland A's guys. But I'd definitely be looking to get exposure to this offense at home, facing Hahn, who's not a very good pitcher.
Yeah, I love Colby Rasmus. His price is really cheap, just about everywhere. I think he's a great play, and he's sort of cold, so I don't think a lot of people are going to play him. My third and final play here, for fantasy draft, I just feel like too cheap for cash games, and I just like Colby Rasmus. Is it crazy to think that he's a cash game play over at fantasy draft at 6,800?
I totally agree with you. He'll bat fourth, and when it's all said and done, the Astros will have one of the higher team totals in terms of runs on the slate. So I'll take the chances there. The cheap price tag, a guy that has been really cold, but gets that good lineup spot and is a part of this potent offense in a really, really good matchup.
All right. Any athletic bats that you really want to focus on here?
A tough team to really pinpoint. Guys that you're going to target. Josh Reddick's one name that definitely kind of stands out. Lowry, if he's batting towards the top of the order, I think he's definitely in play. So it really depends on the lineup positioning for most of these guys. A lot of the bats that we typically like to target, it's when they're facing left-handed pitching, not right-handed pitching.
Yeah, definitely agree with you when it comes to Oakland. With Reddick out of that lineup, it's tough to really pinpoint anybody. Stephen Vogt on FanDuel at 2,800. He's been hitting the 3 and 4 spots. Catcher batting 3 and 4s. We don't see that very often. So Doug Fister, a guy you can target with left-handed bats. He's a guy that struggles with lefties. So don't mind any of the lefties here for Oakland. Top 4, top 3 or 4 spots here as long as they're in good lineup spots.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And yeah, I guess I totally forgot. Josh Reddick is actually out of the lineup now, so I take that back. Don't play Josh Reddick.
No problem. I thought you meant with Reddick out. So
no, that's not what I meant. I'm a donkey and forgot that Josh Reddick's out of the lineup.
That's okay. We'll allow it this one-time hoop. Right. San Francisco at St. Louis. Johnny Cueto and Adam Wainwright. Cueto, he's dealing with a side back injury. He's going into St. Louis to take on the Cardinals. I think it's an easy fade, but I'm a tournament guy. What's your thoughts here when it comes to cash?
No, I can't risk it here. And honestly, it's a situation I might not even risk it if he was healthy. Cardinals going to St. I talk about it all the time. Going to St. Louis, it's just different. I don't know. It's like a tough environment for opposing teams, pitchers and hitters. So probably avoid him anyway. And he's going to be just a slight favorite. Opened up at minus a buck 10. It looks like so. Basically, a pick 'em. A guy that in the right matchup can strike out a lot of batters, but I don't think this is the right matchup. So I'm off him in all formats.
Yeah, I think I tend to agree with you here. I just don't see it. Now, looking at the bats in this game, Wainwright's pitching a little bit better. Cueto, I just can't pinpoint bats in this game.
No, I mean it's like you said. Wainwright is pitching a little bit better. He's a disaster to start the season. Um, Pretty neutral in terms of the ballpark. Pretty neutral in terms of favoring pitchers and hitters. So uh, it's a full fade for me. And honestly, I don't know if there's really that much upside in tournaments either. I mean, I guess the only side I'd potentially get out in tournaments would be the Giants bats, but not overly excited about it. Like you said, Wainwright has been better as of late, so it's kind of a cross off. It's definitely a cross off game in cash games for me. In tournaments, maybe the Giants. I don't know. I can't get really excited about them though.
Yeah, Atlanta at Los Angeles taking on the Dodgers. Kenta Maeda is supposed to make his start here, and Julio Teheran, who is so frustrating. He started to pitch really decent, and he had two back-to-back good games, and then he had that start with Miami, and then all of a sudden, after his start's over, oh well, he was dealing with a blister, and I know a lot of people were targeting here that game against Miami. It was really frustrating. I think we can load up on some Dodger bats here. What's your thoughts on Maeda and Teheran?
Yeah, like with Tehran, it's like I don't know. It seems like he pitches well in spots that no one's on him or no one kind of projects him to pitch well, and he pitches really poorly in the cupcake matchup. So I don't know. It's a really tough guy to figure out. Often there's some injury concerns, so I think it's best to avoid. Maeda, on the other hand, another frustrating player, to be honest with you. So the matchup's obviously great here for him facing a Braves lineup that they really don't have many guys that can hurt you. Freeman's the one scary bat outside of him. There's just not many intimidating bats. So, he's a pretty big favorite here on a site like FanDuel where the win's very important. I guess maybe you could look to him there. But honestly, I'm really not overly excited about him.
Yeah, Maeda, I feel like he's a guy you want to look at on Fantasy Draft and DraftKings. Two pitcher sites, kind of, just not anything really that to excite you too much. So I think he's a two pitcher site. I don't know if I'd target him too much on FanDuel. Just every time, we've seen it over the last few starts. Every time, like he starts to see an offense the third time through, he starts to struggle. But I do like the Dodgers stack here, and I might be on my own, but Corey Seager at 3,400 on FanDuel, that's just too cheap for this guy.
Yeah, and then you get the stack here, and you can get it for pretty cheap. All the main pieces pretty darn cheap. So it allows you to kind of pay up for pitcher and get a stack with guys that have some massive upside. Adrian Gonzalez, you can throw Seager in there, like you said. Jock Peterson somehow gets a good lineup spot. I know you wouldn't be opposed to that by any means, right?
Yeah, chalk jams. No, I would never be opposed to that.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, you can get some nice upside at pretty cheap price tag. So it allows you to still have the ability to pay up for pitcher as well if you'd like to do that.
Sorry, I was tilting Adam Duvall. I played him like every day this week when he's been in Coors, and of course he hits a home run tonight when I don't play him. But anyway. Moving on to Colorado at San Diego before I start tilting that. I do agree with you. I like the Dodgers stack a lot. And, you can stack the Dodgers and, like you said, have a really good pitcher. So I think that's an interesting stack. Colorado at San Diego. Pomerantz and Risson against each other here. Two lefties squaring off against each other. Man, it is Petco. It's not Coors Field. Is there a Coors Field effect in here? And, are Colorado going to stay hot?
Probably not. It's like the two polar opposites, Coors Field and then like Petco. Yeah, it's like the transformation. It can't get much wider. So I think Pomeranz is in play here facing this Rockies team. I think he's pitched really, really well this season. Obviously, has some massive upside with the strikeouts and whatnot. So I like him. Probably more so in tournaments. I think he's priced close enough to Noah Syndergaard, where we'll definitely find the extra money and get up to Syndergaard. But in tournaments, I think Pomeranz is a very, very viable route to go if you're playing on a multiple pitcher site, and Pomeranz is cheap. I would not be opposed to playing him there either.
Yeah, I think he's a really good tournament play. I think he has a ton of upside. Even when the Rockies have been decent against left-handed pitching this season, they're still striking out a ton at 24.3%. So Pomeranz has the upside that I like to look for in a tournament pitcher. I think he's a great play. Now, Chris Russin, on the other hand, I want nothing to do with him. It is San Diego, but I think we could take some bats against him here. Like, he really struggles with righties, and we've seen it with Paxton on Thursday night or Wednesday night. We don't know how it's going to play out with Wade Miley on Thursday night, but Will Myers, Solarte, Matt Kemp, even I say Melvin Upton Jr. and Adam Rosales, these guys can hit left-handed pitching.
Yeah, you pretty much summed it all up there. I mean, you did mention Will Myers too, right?
Yeah, Will Myers is probably my favorite option here.
Yeah, so definitely like that. And they have the upside. I mean, the lineup overall stinks. If they're facing a good pitcher, you never want to play Padres bats. I mean, the guys suck. But, they have some individual pieces that can be good against left-handed pitching. Like you said, and Russin has struggled against right-handed pitching. They've shown the upside a couple days ago. Like you said, they just it might have been 2 nights ago or last night. They absolutely bombed Paxton. So I like that call. Be really sneaky, be really low owned, and I can definitely get on board with that.
All right, it's going to sum it up here for 14 games. Didn't take us too long, but it is a nice 14 game slate, so we had a lot to talk about. Let's play some home run derby, Mike. I don't know where we're standing, for the season. I do need to update it. I know I keep saying that, but I do need to update it. I'll let you go first here.
Gonna go with our boy Colby Rasmus. Talked about him. I think he's in a really good spot there.
It makes me feel even better that you're calling him as a home run and I called him as a cash game play. I feel like we switched spots. I'm gonna go, sticking to that late game. I'm gonna go Will Myers.
I like that. Gonna go with a slight, I guess, a little bit of a homer pick. It's a Detroit Tiger, but it's a Detroit Tiger that sucked this season. But Justin Upton.
Yeah, my second one comes from that game as well. It's JD Martinez. I just love JD against lefties.
Yeah, like that call a lot. Last spot I'm going to go is Conforto. Talked about him earlier. Pretty cheap. Definitely is one of your plays on fantasy draft. So definitely take advantage of his price points. But I like him to pick it up a little bit. Been cold, but I think he gets hot tonight.
At about 11:30 Eastern tomorrow night, there's going to be a tweet that comes across my Twitter, and it's going to say #JockJams, and that's my third and final pick.
I'll be looking for it, buddy.
Yeah, me too.
I probably have no exposure to him, but I hope he does well for you.
All right, if you had to pick a pitcher at the end of the night to pick up a win, doesn't have to score the most fantasy points, and he's not named Syndergaard or Price, who would it be?
Oh gosh, I think I'm gonna go with Maeda. I said a good spot to pick up the win at home facing the Braves. Weak lineup. Not overly excited about him, but I think when it's all said and done, he'll go at least 5 and pick up the win.
I'm gonna stick to my call here. I'm gonna go Odorizzi. I think he's in a good spot. He's a guy that I like here. Rays are scoring some runs right now, so if with a team that's hitting the ball well, let's stick to it. And I just like him a lot. It's going to wrap it up here, my friend. It's been a great week. Glad to have you back here on the podcast. And if you guys haven't gone over to rotogrinders.com and checked out the Ty Dillon promo, we just put it up today. So make sure you guys go check that out. If you live in New York City or New York in general, now is the time to make your voice, heard. Head on over to our site. It's right there pinned at the top of the forums. Make your voice heard. Take the 2 minutes. This is a very, very, very important bill to get passed for daily fantasy. So if you know anybody that lives in New York, tell them to open their mouths. This is the time. So, Hoop, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
Yeah, definitely. No, that's really important, though, for people in New York to get out and make their voices heard. Even if you don't live in the state, it affects all of us. New York is a massive, massive state. If we can get this passed and get the path to full legalization, it would just be awesome for the industry and a a good footprint for other states that are going to head down that same path. So make sure you just take the time, reach out to those people. You can find the links through the forums, I believe, at rotogrinders.com. Very important stuff there.
It takes 2 minutes. Take the time and do it. If you haven't headed over to our sponsor site, fantasydraft.com, if you like the podcast every day, which I know you guys do, make sure you go over there to fantasydraft.com, give them a look, use promo code Grinders. That's going to wrap it up here for Friday. We'll be back on Monday. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you then.